For the first time in 2 years, my foster son called me Dad. I'm a 6 feet 4 inches firefighter with tattoo sleeves down both arms, and a voice my wife says sounds like a rock slide. My foster son wouldn't stay in the same room as me for the first 6 months after he came to live with us. The caseworker had told us during the intake that his previous foster placement had ended because the foster father used to lock him in the basement as punishment. He flinches when men raise their voices, she'd said, avoiding my eyes, even normal voices. He was 9 now and had bounced through 5 homes in 4 years. My wife became his anchor within a week. They'd bake cookies together, read Harry Potter side by side on the couch, have inside jokes I'd smile at from the doorway. I understood. I never pushed. But every time he'd flinch when I closed a cabinet too hard or duck behind my wife when I walked in from a shift, something in me broke a little more. Then my wife got called for a work conference in Denver. 4 days. She almost canceled. The night before she left, I found her sitting on the stairs with her hands over her face. He's going to think I'm leaving him, she whispered. Like the others did. He's not going to trust that I'm coming back. I told her we'd be okay. I wasn't sure I believed it. The first 2 days were brutal. He'd take his dinner into the hall closet and eat it sitting on the floor with the door cracked. He'd sleep with all his clothes on, shoes included, like he was ready to run. When I said good morning, he'd whisper it back so quietly I could barely hear it. I started narrating everything I did out loud so he'd never be surprised by a sound. I'm opening the fridge now. I'm turning on the vacuum in the living room. I'm going upstairs to change. I felt insane. I didn't care. Day 3, I got called into a house fire at 4 in the morning. I had to wake him up to take him to my sister Lorena's house across town. When I knocked on his door and told him gently what was happening, he froze. Full body froze. Then he said the most words he'd ever said to me in one breath. Are you coming back? I got down on one knee in the hallway so I wasn't towering over him and I said, buddy, I will always come back. Every single time. Even if it takes me a while. Even if you're mad at me, I will always come back. He stared at me for a long second. Then he nodded and went to get his backpack. The fire was bad. A family of 4. Second floor collapse. We got everyone out, but I took a piece of ceiling to the shoulder and had to get stitches at the ER. By the time I picked him up from Lorena's, it was almost 8 at night. I was covered in soot, my arm was in a sling, and I smelled like smoke and burnt plastic. I walked into Lorena's kitchen, and he was sitting at the table with a coloring book. He looked up at me, and his whole face changed. He ran across the kitchen and slammed into my legs so hard I almost lost my balance. He wrapped his arms around my waist and buried his face in my hip and started sobbing. Not crying, sobbing. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. Lorena was standing by the sink with her hand over her mouth. I dropped down to his level with my good arm and just held him. I didn't say anything. I didn't try to fix it. I just held him while he cried into my shirt for what felt like 10 minutes.
When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red and his nose was running, and he looked up at me and said, "You came back." I said, "I told you I would." He nodded very seriously, like he was filing that information away somewhere important. And he said, "Can we go home now?" Home. Not your house. Not the house. Home. I carried his backpack out to the truck with my good arm. He climbed into the passenger seat and buckled himself in. Halfway through the drive, in the dark, with the radio playing quiet country music, he said something so soft I almost missed it. He said, "Dad, I nearly ran off the road." I kept my eyes forward and my voice steady, and I said, "Yeah, buddy?" He said, "Does your shoulder hurt?" I said, "A little. It'll be okay." He was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "I can get you ice when we get home. My other foster mom taught me how." I didn't trust myself to speak. I just reached over and squeezed his knee once. He didn't flinch.
When we got home, he made me sit on the couch. He got a bag of frozen peas from the freezer, wrapped it in a dish towel exactly the way someone had taught him a long time ago, and placed it carefully on my shoulder. Then, he sat down on the floor next to the couch, leaned his head against my knee, and said, "I'm going to stay right here until Mom gets back, in case you need something." He fell asleep like that, head against my knee, hand resting on my boot. When my wife called from Denver the next morning, I put her on speaker. Before I could say anything, he leaned toward the phone and said, "Mom, Dad got hurt, but I'm taking care of him."